Look out for Charlie.
I want to talk about the case of the Vance family and a few of the anomalies I found in this case. They were found mummified in Colorado, in a park. I'll get into the details, but I want to say this, that sometimes common sense and that, down to earth, skeptical, and dismissive attitude, it can kind of turn you into a simpleton. It can make you ignore obvious anomalies and make you blind to inconsistencies. It's really no different than taking things too far on the other side of the spectrum, like when people start creating narratives with no proof or information. When I first heard this story, it made sense. It made perfect sense until I took a step back from the actual details and really thought about it. So there was the mother who left with her 14-year-old boy to go live off-grid in July of 2022. And her sister came along with her. So a mother, the aunt, and a 14-year-old boy left. And they went to live off-grid east of Colorado Springs on like the Gold Creek. I'll show you a map. So they left around July of 2022. Now, the bodies were found July 9th, July 10th of 2023. So like a year later, they found these bodies and they were mummified, which is pretty weird to begin with. So let me show you a map real quick. Here is the campground area that they were at. It's pretty remote. They were across from the Gold Creek campground / Gunnison Road. All right, 771 it looks like. So this is like 500 feet from this campground area here. So let's kind of zoom in on that. Allegedly, this is where they were camped at. All right. Now, I want to show you some of the missing Enigmas footage that he was able to get a hold of, and it's the body cam of them checking out the campground, and I want to go over some facts. Now, before I even start playing any of this, I did a test just to see before I even bothered making this video, and I uploaded a couple clips of Missing Enigma. And what I would like to say, even though that I do disagree with him on some stuff, is I'd like to thank him for not being a total dickhead like Coast to Coast and Politis and blocking being able to even use small clips of their video or audio. So I tested it and I could. So thanks to him for not being a total dick. But what I'm going to show you is some stuff that they found while looking around the camp. And then I want to bring up some questions. So here we go. This is the body cam. There's a body there. They're not showing it. So it's right there under a tree, mummified. Okay? And you see like maybe 8 cans of food here. Not very much. And there are a few random cans thrown about, but not many. When he opens the tent here, there's a body lying here on top of a sleeping bag, which is mummified. And then next to it is another body that is completely zipped up in the sleeping bag and totally mummified as well. Which is weird, and I'll get to that. So what you see here is not a lot of cans, not a lot of food, just that pile of cans in front of the tent. And then there are a few just thrown about here and there. There's the other body in that sleeping bag, totally wrapped up. This is important. Pay attention. That looks like a can or a bag there. There's very little food. Very little. That's my point. That looks like clothing. So there's very, very little food. And what that looks like, if they were gone from July of 2022 to July of 2023, that doesn't even look like enough food for a month. Not even enough food for a month. That looks like summer food from the summer before, like maybe a couple weeks, if that. There's 3 people out there, and 2 of the women are relatively big women. So my point is, there is no way that there's enough food for them to get by for a year or even into the winter like they claim at all. So let's check out what he says here.
The officers noted that a significant number of the clothing items, including undergarments, had been cast aside and appeared to have been soiled with human feces. In addition, they noted that the area in general was strewn with feces.
Okay, that is super important. Now, that's one of the facts of the case that sounded totally normal until I sat and thought about it. They kept making note of this. There was feces everywhere, okay?
This led officers to consider the fact that all 3 individuals may have been sick.
Now, you have to pay attention. Let's go back over that. They're not saying that there's just a little bit of feces smeared on the clothes. They're claiming that there are piles of feces, okay?
Had been cast aside and appeared to have been soiled with human feces. In addition, they noted that the area in general was strewn with feces.
That's a problem. It really is a problem. They were found July 9th and July 10th of 2023. They were said to have died in the wintertime, allegedly because they were trapped. Okay, we'll get into that. That's July of 2023 in Colorado. That's midsummer, out in the wilderness. There's bugs, there's flies, there's nature, and there are other critters that have been active for months. I want you to really think about this. Why is there still poop there? All right? If you have a dog, or if you've experienced nature, you know that it does not take long at all for poop to be eaten away and dissolved into the ground. Dried up and consumed by soil and nature, period. Poop can disappear in a matter of a few days, right? So if these people died in the winter of 2022, heading into 2023, because they were mummified, how on earth is poop still hanging around a campsite in a remote section? How is it hanging around a campsite in July? Can anyone explain this to me? Why there is still poop in July? That makes no sense to me at all. And they don't just say it once, they say it over and over.
Officers could see. The first thing officers note in their report was a large amount of tissue paper and excrement spread throughout the area.
How is that possible in July? You know, you can clean up dog poop in your yard and put it somewhere, you know, in a corner of the yard or whatever. I gotta be, you know, gross about this. And it will be gone within a couple of days. How is there poop that is literally 7-8 months old, allegedly, still hanging around from mummified bodies? Please explain this to me.
And of course the 8x8 foot gray dome tent set up in a small clearing within the pine trees. As they approached, they encountered remains of a human male on the ground about 13 feet from the front of the tent. It appeared to them that the body had been out in the elements for a number of months. The face was black, dried out, and unidentifiable. They note that the body was lightly clothed in a black top and gray sweatshirt, but with no shoes or socks. As they continued their search, they discovered a significant number of clothing items strewn around the area. Trash also littered the campsite in an indiscriminate fashion.
But there's not a lot of food. There's not even enough food for 3 people like that for a few weeks or a month.
The majority of it consisted of
See that? Like there's what? 6-7 cans, you know?
old tin cans and packaging for granola bars and ramen soup. The gray tent was closed when they arrived in the area. There were a number of shoes sitting outside of the tent, along with more clothing and assorted packs and bags. A small 3-foot shovel and a cooking pot was laying near the tent. Officers then note a large pile of feces located within about
They
10
say it again. How is there 7-month-old poop there out in nature? So you're telling me the flies, the bugs, nothing got at this and ate this up? It didn't dry? To me, it sounds absolutely absurd. Then you compare that to mummified bodies, and then it sounds really absurd. These bodies had time to mummify, but there is still poop there. There are other anomalies that I'm going to get into that are equally as important.
Feet of the tent and at the base of a pine tree. The body that was discovered outside was on the other side of this same tree. North of the tent area was what officers described as a contained wood structure made of pine poles and sticks, which contained additional small packs. Nearby they found a large matted clump of black hair, which the officer believed to be human in origin.
So what else was going on here? The people that Missing Enigma calls authorities claim that these people were likely trapped in the park because of snow, and states that towing their car from the area, which they did in like November or something, was likely their death sentence. However, if the area isn't plowed and filled up with snow, what good would having a car help in deep snow anyway? And is that area plowed in the wintertime? Well, I decided to look it up. As I looked it up, I just asked in capital letters here, is Gold Creek Campground plowed in the wintertime? And it says that it's not plowed, but the road to the campground is closed to vehicles beyond that point. Instead, the road is groomed for cross-country skiing. So there is a trail there. You could get out. You're not just stuck there, all right? You could easily find your way out with the ski trail, and it's called Snowshoe Trail. And there are photos of these ski trails, at least plowed enough for people to walk along. So these people weren't really trapped there when you think about it. And if there was that much snow, a car wouldn't have been a death sentence because they wouldn't have been able to get out anyway. So none of it makes sense. And now I want to talk about this. If you look at this sleeping bag, it is in perfect condition. They're all mummified. Even the person outside the tent, the boy, the 14-year-old boy, is mummified. Mummified. The poop is still there. These people are still there, mummified in July. So you have to ask the question, why is there zero animal predation at all? Generally, when people die in the wilderness and they're left there for a while, let's even consider like the Yuba City 5 or the Yuba County 5, right? It takes a long time to find their entire body, if they ever do. There's birds, vultures, bugs. Then you have bears, coyotes, and other scavengers that will drag the body parts around to different areas, making it very, very hard to find all the body parts, if you ever find all the body parts. But here are these people, all in perfect condition. So I decided to look it up, and I wanted to make sure that the animals that I believed to be in that area were actually in that area. And to be sure, I verified that this is, in fact, a pretty remote area. Animals are not going to generally be afraid to roam an area like this at all. So my first question was, what type of wildlife is in the Gunnison National Forest? And it says deer, elk, bears, mountain lions, as well as species like bighorn sheep, moose, various birds, reptiles, and fish, right? So there are bears, mountain lions, and there are scavengers. So I decided to look up what type of scavengers are in that forest as well. So as I looked it up, I came up with coyotes, badgers, weasels, ringtail cats, in addition, smaller animals like rodents, chipmunks, blah, blah, blah. So there are tons of scavengers, tons of them, including coyotes. You have to ask yourself, why is there zero animal predation of these mummified bodies out in the middle of nowhere in Colorado? That doesn't make any sense to me. Please explain that to me as if I'm a 5-year-old. That doesn't make any sense. The poop's still there. The bodies are not messed with at all. There is no animal predation, but these bodies are mummified like they've been there for a long, long time. It seems totally normal, like a typical death, until you step back and look at it, and then it's kind of weird. You know, as it turns out, the area is plowed for a ski trail, so you could walk out if you wanted to. The bodies are totally and completely mummified, but the poop is still there in July, and there is zero animal predation. That makes no sense to me at all. Now, here I just want to confirm that Missing Enigma is sponsored by the mental health industry. Here we go.
Before we continue, I want to take a moment to talk about the sponsor of this video, BetterHelp.
So, there you go. That's all I needed to show you. Now, let's listen to the reasons that they give for these people leaving the grid and taking off for, the forest to live off the land.
According to people close to the family, Rebecca didn't like what she was seeing in society today, especially during and after the pandemic, so she developed a plan to try and live off the land. Initially, her sister Christine was not on board, but she was eventually convinced.
So they're going to try to blame that on, what do they call it, folie à deux or whatever, like insanity for two. That's the kind of thing and kind of game they play. So let's let him keep going here.
The 14-year-old was reportedly excited to be living off-grid with his mom. More information on the family was provided after the coroner called Travala Jara, a half-sister to Christine and Rebecca. Travala stated that in the last 1 to 2 years, Rebecca had become paranoid of the government and wanted to move off-grid, so she began making plans to do just that. She said that Christine did not really want to go, but also did not want Rebecca and her son to go by themselves, and apparently started buying into Rebecca's paranoia. Was the Vance family probably misinformed on the ease of living off-grid? It certainly seems so. Did mental illness play a part in Rebecca Vance's desire to leave society? Possibly.
Okay, that's very weird, right? Now, being sponsored by BetterHelp, it does not seem strange at all that Missing Enigma would try to bring up possible insanity for somebody's reaction to the quote-unquote pandemic. After all, people like Sean Penn and his Bolshevik buddies were talking about mandatory shots for everybody and locking people in homes who wouldn't accept it. People were getting their doors kicked in Australia and the UK. The Terminator, Arnold Schwarzenegger, was saying, "Fuck your freedom." People were dropping dead left and right after getting the shots. And then the news began reporting sudden kid death syndrome, basically, right? And even saying that college-age kids died of joy after getting the vax and then getting really good news in the mail. They died of joy. They really did say that. You can look it up. Nothing to be paranoid about at all, right? And if you did have questions or wanted nothing to do with that insanity, you are apparently mentally ill, right? So, very, very weird. It doesn't surprise me, being sponsored by BetterHelp, that he would say that. I don't like what I'm seeing after the pandemic. It's 2025, and our stores never went back to 24 hours. It's like living in the 1970s, worse even. And in reality, there was no quote-unquote pandemic, and I don't like hearing that word for an alleged illness that had a 98 through 99% survival rate. All right? Let's let him keep going here.
In reality, things like this happen more often than you might think. Somebody gets the idea to try and live off-grid or attempt bushcraft on their own. They might be inexperienced and in for a hard lesson. Other times the lesson can be far more severe. The Vance family was likely ill-prepared to take on this challenge at every level. I would imagine there came a point during their stay where they tried to leave by going back to their vehicle, only to find it gone.
That is very, very weird. If they tried to leave because of the weather or because they couldn't survive and found it gone, they could just walk out. It was like 7 miles. And even in the wintertime, Google says that this place is turned into a ski trail. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. There's a lot of anomalies to this case when you actually stand back and look at it. Now, the coroner said that these people died by hypothermia and malnutrition. But that's purely guessing. And purely guessing, that's a fact. They know it. The coroners know it. And people like Missing Enigma know it. And that's just the way it is. It's just a guess. They don't know. But these people were mummified. They were mummified. And all the poop was still there in July. I still can never get over that. My dog pooped 2 days ago. And I threw it under a tree. And it's gone now. So when you really look at this, there are some real anomalies. These people left for quote-unquote off-grid around July of 2022, and the bodies were found July 9th or July 10th of 2023, a year later. The food itself, there isn't even enough food to last a few weeks or a month, let alone a year. The bodies are mummified, but there's still poop around. They claim that they could have been trapped in the camp, but as it turns out, that area is plowed into like a ski trail for cross-country skiing or whatever. And just as weird as the poop still being there, there is zero animal predation with coyotes, bears, and other animals out there through a winter. It's through a fall, a winter, a spring, and a summer. That just seems almost impossible to me. So when you look at this case, it seems totally normal on the outside, but as you look at the details, it gets stranger and stranger, and there's really something to think about here. I think there's a lot more to this than we're actually realizing. I'm not sure what to make of it, but it seems like there might be something else going on. And that's it for now. Look out for Charlie.